All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone. We really appreciate you coming to this session of the Internship Showcase. This is the engineering panel. We have some really great panelists that are going to be sharing their experiences with you. So we appreciate you listening, and think of some questions. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. So my name is Lisa Dichter, and I work in the Career Center with the undergrad engineering students. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Kurz. I work in the CPDC with engineering undergraduate students as well. Just a little background, the purpose of the internship showcase is twofold. One, to explore various job functions, industries, and career opportunities. And two, to learn how to get an internship in your area of interest, from submitting your application to actually getting the offer. The panelists with us today were selected and invited by us career consultants to share their internship experiences as well as their efforts and strategies for obtaining them. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa to introduce our panelists.
Great. We have 6 panelists that we are excited about. I'll introduce all of them and then we'll start back at the beginning. So we have Raul Jagolkar. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. He is a senior Chemi BME student, and he interned at Panasonic Energy North as a quality engineering intern. Then we're going to hear from Kaylee Liang, and she is also a senior Chemi BME, and she interned at Bristol Myers Squibb as an associate engineer scientist for a co-op. Then we'll hear from Nazanin Azimi, and she is a junior computational physics student who interned at Naval Nuclear Lab, Future Reactor Concepts, as a nuclear engineering intern. Next is Sophie Kohanek, and she is a sophomore environmental engineering and EPP student. She interned with the civil engineering department at Carnegie Mellon. Alfred Chang is a senior mechanical engineering student who interned at several places at Apple as an iPhone product design intern and at Key Logic Systems as an energy analyst intern. And then finally, we'll hear from Sarah Corsa, who is a senior chemical engineering student who interned at DuPont, yeah, I can say that, as a manufacturing process engineering intern. Sarah? Anything else we need to say before we get started? Okay. All right. Well, let's take it away, Raul.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. Excited to be here. Please let me know if you have any questions throughout. And so, yeah, my name's Rahul. I'm a senior in Chemi BME, as you can see. A few of the things I do, just to give you a bit of background about myself. Right now, I'm the captain of CMU Bhangra Indian dance team. Little plug for that, I guess. And then on like the more academic side, I've been doing research no longer, but I did research from sophomore fall to like junior, end of spring, summer, in optimization algorithms with the Grossman group. That's in the Chemi department. I taught as a TA for, we all know 112, for like 2 semesters over the summer and then last fall. And I worked as a career peer mentor at the CPDC actually up until just last spring. So that's a bit about like what I've done here at CMU. Over this past summer, I worked as a quality engineering intern at, like you said, this long name, Penna. I'm just gonna call it Panasonic or Penna, so I don't have to say so many words. But the goal of this like whole company really is they're at like a factory owned by Tesla called like their Gigafactory, and they're just manufacturing lithium-ion batteries for Tesla's cars, right? So I learned a lot about manufacturing, about EVs, about battery technology, and especially learned a lot about what I want out of my career and out of jobs. So definitely feel free to ask questions about that, but I'll get more into that. So first off, a few details of my internship process or experience, I guess. My application process was thankfully straightforward for this one, I guess, straightforward. I found the position on Handshake and asked for a resume and cover letter. I had 2 interviews. One was very informal, just like the same day I applied. I spoke on the phone with the recruiter for just not even 15 minutes. And then a few days later, I had a more formal, like hour-long interview. I don't exactly remember, but that was like a more formal interview, I guess, with my potential supervisor, who was my supervisor, because luckily I got an offer. So as for what I did at Panasonic, two of the projects I had, and I'll talk about this in a second, but this first one, actually, the one that I feel I learned more from, was not even something I was going to be doing. It just came about because I was specifically asking and looking for different things that I was interested in as an intern, which is something you can do as an intern more so than as a full-time. But anyways, so you can read the descriptions I have. These are from my resume, so definitely like fancier words, but to break down like that, the first one, pretty much just we were trying to see whether the electrolyte, which is like a liquid that goes inside batteries, or in Panasonic's case, liquid inside the batteries, if that has any effect on the battery's performance, on defects, and trying to connect all of those pieces in such a big manufacturing plant was actually a pretty considerable task, and I ended up taking a lot of time, but I learned a lot about that, right? Like you don't see that I guess you don't see like the complexities in the real world when we're talking about more day-to-day or more like class-based problem sets. And the second thing is creating a quality control framework to standardize quality inspections across our materials. And that one, I'll be honest, I was less interested in, but was still a great learning experience, because I think that's also the reality of life, is that not everything is going to be like what you love. But what I did there is had to work with a lot of different teams, like the material science teams, with our like more supplier focused teams, and try to figure out how to consolidate all this information and be able to, receive the materials that we need to, and check them to make sure that they're up to spec in a effective way, I guess. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. And the biggest takeaways from this experience to me were learning about manufacturing, which I ended up liking a lot, and that's actually sort of the field I'm going to go into full time, and EVs and battery technology. I thought those were all really cool, and I liked learning about them. Another thing is staying curious, always asking questions, and like I said, asking for projects you're interested in. No one's just going to hand it to you. You have to take a bit of initiative and go after things that you're interested in. Next, if possible, tailor your resume a little bit. One of the things my supervisor told me was that they wanted to speak to me because they wanted someone with some amount of Python experience. So even though I wanted my work to be pretty like traditional engineering, turns out like some of the other stuff that I did actually might have been the reason I got the interview. Last things, I'm gonna flip-flop. So first off, work ethic and the importance of working with others. Just, I guess, keep practicing that while you're here at CMU. And I mean, always keep working at those things. And then last thing I'll tie in with the advice is how unpredictable recruiting can be. Because genuinely it's a matter of chance, right? There's a lot of different applications. So don't get discouraged, but prioritize recruiting. Get a solid game plan, review that game plan with your career consultant, like Lisa and Sarah here. And then genuinely, I would say, don't worry too much. Like, work hard, make it a priority, but don't stress. It's kind of up in the air. And I don't want to run over, so that's everything from me. Thank you so much for the time, and please ask questions if you have any. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Raul. We really appreciate that. That was good information. If you have a question for Raul, we can answer. Actually, let's do all the presentations first. Each presentation is 3 to 5 minutes, and we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. So if you could either put them in the chat or save them up, that would be great. So next up is Kaylee.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Actually, before I get started, should I request remote control so you don't have to do the clicking for me?
No, I'll click if there's
Okay.
only a few. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So again, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Kaylee, and I'm also a senior in chemical engineering and biomedical engineering. Last semester, I did a 6-month remote co-op with Bristol Myers Squibb, which is a pharmaceutical company. So I'll be talking about the experience I had there today. A little bit about me before I get into that. I also had research experience in a lab on campus, which is really useful, especially if you're studying BME and you want to do something like BME related. I did my research with Dr. Zhang, who is with the BME ECE department, and that was in cancer diagnostics. I also had 2 prior internships at USP and Vigene Biosciences, which are both drug and biotech industries. So I did have a little bit more of like a padded resume, I guess you would call it. But if you have any questions about how I got those early on as well, please feel free to ask. And at the time that I applied, I was a safety chair at ChemiCar, and I was in ChemiCar for about 3 years. I guess, yeah, sorry, the order got a little mixed up here, but I'll get into it anyway.
You want me to?
So, oh, perfect. Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's perfect. All right, so about BMS, or Bristol Myers Squibb. So if you don't know what it is, it's a global pharmaceutical company, and it focuses on key areas which are oncology, hematology, cardiovascular, and immunology. And they basically make medicines to help treat serious diseases in patients. And as I mentioned before, my co-op was remote, so I did, like most of my work at home. But this didn't prevent me from, learning a lot of things and contributing to my team's work. So I worked with the MS&T department at BMS, and MS&T stands for Manufacturing, Sciences, and Technology. One of the projects I did, which I'll call the active maintenance project, is I basically helped develop maintenance protocols for the active machine, which is used for protein purification and is a really crucial part of drug manufacturing. Another project I did, which is listed on the list as stockout mitigation study, was that we had a supplier shortage during the time I was there because of COVID supply chain issues. And basically, as part of this project, we were figuring out, how we can change our manufacturing process so that we're still meeting our goals for our drug pipeline, even though we were, missing some supplies. And this is a really good example of, how, the real world affects your work, and you have to learn to adapt to it. So I learned a lot about, how to be flexible and be adaptable in the workplace. And a lot of problem solving during my time here. I was able to work on a lot of other projects as well. The ones I just listed are, primarily the ones I worked on, but spending like 6 there, I definitely did a lot. So some other things that I did were I learned to use like new software for controlling the ACTAs, and I was able to do this remotely. So I could do test runs and experiments like all from my house, which was really cool. And BMS also did a really good job with having like virtual networking events. So I was able to meet like employees from all over BMS from different departments. I was able to meet the associate director, sorry. And yeah, so I also hosted a virtual happy hour, which you can do if you're 21, but if you're not, then that's fine too. They'll have events for you as well. And even though it was remote, I was actually able to visit them on site after asking. So they had a rule where they weren't gonna let any coughs on, but as you'll see as one of my takeaways, you should just ask because you never know what you might get. So that's kind of the rundown of what I did at BMS. So yeah, now going to the application process. I applied in January of my junior year, and I actually just applied for like their summer internships. And the application process is pretty straightforward. It's on Workday. You send your resume, answer some like really short questions, like no essay questions, and you can send a cover letter if you want. I actually was, when they reached out to me for the interview, they asked me to interview for a co-op instead. And I was like, well, okay. So it was just one round with 2 interviewers, mostly behavioral type questions. So a lot of times they'll ask it based on, their values and their culture. So that's really a good thing to study up on if you're doing interviews. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll wrap it up really quick. Just some really important advice that at least I learned during this process. The first is, try not to shut yourself out to different opportunities. Yes, I wanted an internship at first, but when presented with the opportunity to do a co-op, I was like, obviously there were drawbacks. I did miss a semester of school, but I was able to get a lot of projects done. I gained a lot of work experience, and I was able to work with my teachers and the engineering school staff so that I could finish my degree in just an extra semester. So it's working out for me. And the last thing is to not be afraid to ask for things. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and to ask for, I guess, things that like whatever you want, I guess. The point is, like, you don't know what you might get if you don't ask. So yeah, I hope these will help you in your recruiting and application processes. Thank you for listening.
Great. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thanks, Kaylee. I really appreciate that. That was some good advice. Appreciate it. We'll hopefully get you some questions soon. Next up is Nazanin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nazanin. I'm actually in MCS, but I did a nuclear engineering internship last summer. So I'm a junior, I'm a physics major, and I'm doing the computational physics track. So when I applied for this internship, I was actually a freshman, so I didn't really have much experience under my belt. But between the time I applied and I went to the internship, I did some like research stuff, so I gained skills there, and I was also a TA for 110 the year before I went. So a little bit about Naval Nuclear Lab. So it's a government contracted company, which means you don't actually work for the government, but you still have to like do a lot of the things that government workers have to do. And they work on the nuclear reactor systems that power the Navy submarines. So they work on everything from like the actual reactor core to like the cooling mechanisms and all of that. So they work on the whole systems. So the application process, I found them for the first time at the CMU job fair. I think it was like Jumpstart my freshman year. And they like recruiting at CMU, so they're usually at the job fairs. And I applied my freshman spring. And the thing about this is you apply for 2 summers like after, so you won't be getting it the summer that the summer following after you apply. And that's because there's like a whole clearance process that you have to go through. I'll talk about that in a second, but first I'll hit. So I had one phone interview that was like a month maybe after I applied with the hiring manager. And it was mostly behavioral questions and just stuff like why I like physics. I remember them asking me why I like physics and why I majored in physics. But I will say I do know that the internship, the interviewing process changes, and it might change by the time you apply, because it's sometimes like you actually might be talking to the manager that will actually hire you instead of like a hiring manager. But that was my experience. And yeah, the biggest thing to keep in mind, I would say, is that you have to apply for a government clearance, which can take up to 9 months, which is why you apply so early. So that involves like an extensive background check, like character references. So I had to, hit up all my friends and ask them if I could put them, and like even some like neighbors and stuff. They asked for a lot. And then drug testing. So they asked for a really quick turnaround to like 2 to 3 days. So that's something to keep in mind. Like especially if you're in Pittsburgh and you like don't have a car, you have to get to the drug testing facility. But I only had to drug test once or twice before my actual internship. Oh, this is a repeat. I think it.
Sorry.
You can just go to the next one. Yeah. Okay. So what the actual internship is like, it's a 10 or 12-week internship, depending on like your project and your team. The company has a really large internship program, which is kind of nice. It's like well structured. There's a lot of other interns that you can like meet that will be there with you. So there's a lot of intern events. So this internship is really, really centered around hiring people full-time like after they graduate. So they do a lot to like have you learn about like the facilities and the labs and like what kind of jobs you could do, because honestly it's like a massive company and they do a ton of stuff, so there's really a lot to learn. There was like weekly guest speakers, like we had some people from like the Navy come talk to us. Some of them were professional development workshops with like HR and stuff. And all of these are optional, but they're really helpful. And in normal years, there's like intern events, but we didn't have much because it was COVID. And then as an intern, you're assigned to a team, and each team only has one intern top. So like you'll be the only intern in your team. You'll be assigned to a manager / a mentor who'll be like your go-to. and like weekly meetings with them. And then there's also like a project mentor that's more like, that's not a manager, that knows more about your project and stuff that you'll be working with. And then just another thing to keep in mind, there's like a ton of different jobs within the lab. So I was a nuclear engineering intern, but like they have every other kind of engineering imaginable, because like they're working on like cooling systems, like fluid mechanics, all of that. Tons of software stuff. And then they have research labs too. So if you're interested in that. And then more specifically about my project. So I was in the future reactor concepts group, which means that basically we were like designing the next generation reactors. So at a high level, I was working with like reactor core simulations, and I was running simulations, collecting data. And then at the end of my internship, I trained like a machine learning model to help predict this data, so that like running the simulations like took a long time and like a lot of space, obviously. So we were trying to make that more efficient. So the technical skills, there was a lot of supercomputing, because I ran all these on their supercomputer that they have there. So I learned a lot about that. Lots of Unix. I basically learned the entire Unix environment for the first time. Python, so all those new libraries that I didn't know before, and machine learning, obviously. And one thing to note is that before this internship, I think I had only taken 112 and 122. So I didn't really have much like experience in any of this stuff. I also didn't have any nuclear like physics experience at all either. I hadn't like, you take those like your junior, senior year in the physics major. So I learned a lot of them on the job. And they're very like, they know that you don't know much because they hire freshmen. So they're very helpful, and like, it was really good because I learned so much in one summer. And then soft skills, so like presenting, they make all the interns do like a big presentation at the end to like the really high up like managers. And then also every week, so like working in a team, communication. So the team basically treats you like you're on the team. So you do like weekly meetings with them, you know, debrief, talk about what you're having trouble with, what you did, which is really nice to kind of see what it's like to have an actual job. And then large project organization. So this is like the biggest project I had ever done up until then. So a lot of like file management, learning like to write scripts that did that stuff for me. Yeah, and so pros and cons. So it's a really nice structured internship. So it was good for me because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do yet. So like I remember I worked at a startup my freshman summer, and they were very much like choose whatever project you like. But as someone who didn't really know what I wanted, that was rough. But this was really nice because you came in, they had a project set out for you. You had people like who could help you every step of the way. So good if you don't have a lot of experience because you apply your freshman year. You can apply your sophomore year as well. Like you don't have to apply your freshman year. Tons of interns get invited for next summer, and then a full-time job. So if that's your goal.
Lisa, we can't see the slide.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay,
Okay.
now? Sorry.
All good.
And then there's a lot of mobility to work for different teams within the company. So if one summer you don't like the team, like my manager basically asked me, what team do you want to be on next summer if you get rehired, and I got to choose where I wanted to go next. And then it's a super friendly work environment. Like everyone's really helpful, and I had tons of questions, of course, and everyone was really willing to like help me and talk to me. And as other people have said, it's always good to ask questions. So it was a good environment for that. And just some of the cons. So it was government. So like a lot of red tape. So like I couldn't bring my phone into the lab. So I had to keep it in my car. Like tons of security badges and stuff getting in and stuff. Fingerprint scanners, all that. Your work might be confidential, so you can't take it home. So I wasn't allowed to do any remote work because I had to be in the lab to do all my work. I don't like have any of my project now, like I can't reference it or anything because it's all confidential. Your project won't always necessarily be used. So I think this is a big thing with government work, is that like they do a lot of like research and testing, but not all of it is 100% used. Like a lot of things get put on the shelf and forgotten about. So that's just something to keep in mind. And it's a conservative company, so because they're working on submarines, like there are people who work on submarines. There's like lives at stake here, so they work really slowly. They do like a lot of research before implementing any new technology. So it's pretty slow pace. Like project times are like 10-20 years from start to finish. You might not see like a completed project. Like your intern project might not be like fully complete in your summer there. And it's not necessarily the most cutting edge modern technology because, like I said, they're slow to integrate that stuff until it's fully tested. And yeah, that's it.
That's great. Really appreciate it. That was a good talk. Thanks, Nazanin. We have Sophie next.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm a sophomore studying environmental engineering and engineering public policy. A little bit about me outside of school. I like soccer. I'm a real outdoorsy person. I'm currently an SI leader. If anyone is taking differential equations, come to SI. It's very helpful. And last summer I worked through the Civil and Environmental Engineering Summer Research Program on a project called Context Aware Task Assistance for Nuclear Field Workers by fusing field videos and 3D laser scanning point clouds, which is a very confusing name, and I will explain it later, so don't worry if that sounds way over your head. So how I got my job, I applied through Handshake. Our department also emailed us to let us know that these opportunities existed. And I applied late March, early April, so it was a little bit later than a lot of other internships are, which is really nice if you're getting into the semester and you're stressed about not having something set up for the summer. So I applied internally through Handshake. I just needed a resume and a cover letter. And they had a list of different projects that you could apply for. And so I had one interview. I applied for 4 projects. I had one interview with Professor Destiny Knock and her PhD student. And that was one of the projects I applied for. So I interviewed with them. And they were asking about my experience before then. That semester I'd been working as an intern for the Scott Institute for Energy Innovation on campus, which was a great experience, and I think helped me get this job. And someone who's really helpful is Jody Lynn Russo. She kind of runs the whole summer research program. And so, like I said, I applied for 4 projects, but the one that I got chosen for was completely different. It was not one of the ones I applied for. And so going back and forth with her, she said, Dr. Tong, who I ended up working under, is interested in having you work on his project. Would you be interested in that? And that's how I kind of got chosen for the one I did. So I did a few things through my project. I think it was interesting because my project, unlike some of the other ones, was primarily a research project. So I went through the whole research process. I developed my own research question. I did a lit review, stuff like that. But some of the outcomes of my project is that throughout the summer, I built and trained my own object detection algorithm, which you can see fully functioning in my picture there. And so I used the YOLO version 3 object detection algorithm. It was a Python-based algorithm, so I got the chance to learn some Python. Previously, I knew Java, not Python, so that was a really useful skill. And I learned how to label data, and I learned a lot about machine learning in that process, obviously. It was because object detection algorithms are neural network-based algorithms, so I did some research into that before training my algorithm. One of the other big outcomes of my project is a simulation I made, which you will see a little bit in the next slide. And I made this simulation on Simulink, which is an extension of MATLAB, and I had never used it before. None of my team had ever used Simulink before, so that was really interesting, is that not only was I learning how to use Simulink, I was also kind of teaching the other people on the team. And so my simulation was aimed to model the water flow between different tanks, simulating one of the operations in a nuclear power plant. And one of the interesting things is that it collected environmental noise, which was really interesting to learn how to code in kind of uncertainty into a simulation. And the purpose of this was to demonstrate the dangers of operational errors in nuclear power plants, because my project was, in a broader sense, looking at how to prevent human operational errors in nuclear power plants. And then I am actually currently in the final stages of writing a conference paper for the International Applied Human Factors and Ergonomics Conference this summer. So I did the summer research project, which ended in the end of July, and then I got my position was actually extended through to the beginning of October, which is when I was working on that simulation. And then I'm still working with this team, which is really exciting, even though I'm not technically, I don't have that position anymore. But I'm still working with the team. We wrote an abstract and now we're writing a conference paper, which is very exciting for me because the team I work with is across 3 universities. So I've met a lot of really interesting people through that. And so that's one of the reasons I would really recommend looking into a summer research program. I know several departments have them. It was really great because I got to work with a professional research team. Like I said, our team included 3 different universities. We had Carnegie Mellon, Ohio State, and Arizona State. And then there were also some industry partners. So I got a lot of experience working with different people in a professional setting. And the summer research program was really great because I had a lot of support from the other students in the program who are working on their own projects, as well as the professors in charge of the program. And so it was a really great way for me to get to know people and get some new experience with a really tangible outcome.
Great. So with that, yeah, Sophie, that's it. We're good. Okay, thank you. Really appreciate it. So save up your questions because get them ready. We have 2 more presenters. So thanks, Sophie. Now we have Alfred and then we'll have Sarah. Go ahead, Alfred.
Hey everyone. So my name is Alfred. As Lisa mentioned earlier, I am a senior studying mechanical engineering. I'm originally from California, and on campus, I'm involved in a few different orgs, but my primary involvement is in CIA Buggy, as well as ASME. And this past year, in 2021, I completed 2 internships. I worked at Apple on the iPhone product design team in the fall. And I also worked at KeyLogic as an energy analyst intern. So just starting off, I'll first talk about Apple. I'll go through sort of like the application process, some comments that I have about it. Then I'll talk about like onboarding and company culture. So my application process, I'd say, you could say started back in like sophomore year. I had a friend who also happened to be a full-timer at Apple. He was working on a completely different team. He was doing software related work, but I asked him for a referral. And then I don't think anything really happened with that. So I'm not too sure how much of an impact that actually had, but that did happen. Then in November of 2020, I applied online directly on Apple's website. There's a way they have a lot of job listings, new ones keep coming out, and there's a way to filter out for specific teams and specific positions. So I did that, didn't hear back for a few months until March, where I received an email from a recruiter asking for a technical interview. And so that sort of kicked off the interviewing process for me, which involved just 3 rounds of technical interviews. The interviewers that I had were all on the same team that I ended up working with. And so they just had different technical questions, like 1 question per interview. And yeah, it went pretty smoothly, I would say. And originally I thought I was interviewing for a summer internship, but what ended up happening was in the 3rd interview, the interviewer told me that all the summer positions were fully booked and asked if I could do a fall internship. So I looked at my schedule and it looked like it would work. So I ended up working in the fall. Yeah, general, I guess, comments about the interviewing process. So each team at Apple does their own interviews. So like the iPhone and watch team, or the Mac team, or the interconnect team, they have their own separate interviewing process. So different recruiters will reach out to you if multiple teams want to interview you. And one thing that I noticed while interviewing is that the recruiters and interviewers will like to ask you if you are able to do a year, since that allows you or decreases the number of applicants they have to screen, and also allows you to have more time to like take on full-time sort of responsibilities. I personally did not want to, since I wanted to make sure I graduated on time. Then for specific interviewing questions, I would highly recommend studying beam bending and stress strain curves. I know a lot of people, a lot of mechies are like, oh, you should study this. And then sometimes people go like, oh, it's probably not going to show up. I'm telling you, it definitely does. I've heard a lot of my friends as well, they get a lot of beam bending questions and stress strain curve questions in their interviews. So I would definitely recommend studying that. And then in the third interview, I had one like small design question where basically I was faced with a like scenario, had to design, like think through material selection for like a product to withstand certain forces, whether like drop tests or punctures or things like that. So that is also something to be aware of. And when you first join Apple, the first 2 weeks are primarily onboarding. First day, there's like a short meeting with your manager, then you do a lot of computer setup, and there are a lot of accounts that you'll need to set up. But the first day is pretty lax. Then during the first 2 weeks, you also do CAD training, which is quite extensive and very helpful. And then as well, in tandem, you do a small design project just to get you acquainted with the different processes that Apple has. And then starting the second week, you also begin to attend meetings with your team and to try to begin to learn about what's happening in the company. A few comments about company culture is that the iPhone team specifically, I know that iPhone runs on a very tight schedule. We release 4 phones every year. So there's a lot of work that needs to get done quite quickly. Overtime work, unfortunately, is expected from both full-timers and interns. I was not aware of this during my interviewing process. So it would be good to check with your recruiter in general, no matter the company, to like see if or to understand how many hours is expected each week. But yeah, even though you do have to work overtime, I guess one bright side is that you are paid hourly and non-exempt from overtime pay. So you do get paid extra if you have to go overtime. Other things about Apple is that there are a lot of terms and acronyms and code names that you have to sort of learn on the spot, since everything is pretty confidential, or like they try to keep things confidential and things like that. But yeah. And then moving on to key logic. So my application process for this was pretty short. I attended the Energy Week Career Fair in March of 2021. I spoke with a recruiter one-on-one for a little bit. Then 3 weeks later, I heard back with an offer. I think I might have actually slipped through the interviewing process, but don't tell anyone. So yeah, the projects, I did a lot of like literature review, writing reports, and sort of like doing combing through Excel data points and like finding key candidates for like carbon capture and sequestration and things like that. And then, yes, in general, on the next slide, my sort of like general search and job suggestions are that like it's never too late to apply, especially like Mechie jobs are posted year round. April 2021 was when I landed my Keylogic internship, and I had literally applied in March. So you can still get things in the spring. So you don't have to worry too much. But nonetheless, I would still suggest starting early to minimize that sort of stress and worry, since I did experience that a bit as the spring semester started rolling around. Then on the job, I would suggest like working to like intentionally learning or working to learn, like actively identifying transferable skills and knowledge, things that you can take with you even after you move on from your company. I feel like that really helps you get the most out of your internship rather than just doing work to do work. And final thing, I feel like this is a very big one, is to know your bandwidth and to stand by and defend it. It is tempting, but also extremely dangerous to overcommit to tasks. Sometimes you'll see like people working 60-hour weeks, and like sometimes you feel like you should be doing that too, but I really strongly encourage you to know your own bandwidth and stand by it, because college is already hard enough, and I don't think anyone wants to continue that sort of stress into their work life. So that is all.
Okay, thanks, Alfred. We appreciate that. All right, Sarah, you're up.
Hi guys, my name is Sarah Corsa, and I interned with DuPont this past summer as a CMPT manufacturing process engineering intern. Just a little background about myself. So I am a senior in chemical engineering with a minor in supply chain and operations management. I also have some side businesses that I work on. So I'm also a natural hair care specialist, do a lot of community work. I'm currently the president of Spirit, our BSU on campus, and I like to work out and play lacrosse. So if anyone knows how to play and has a stick, definitely contact me. Yeah, so a little bit about my position. CMPT is chemical mechanical planarizing technologies. It's really known acronym within the semiconductor business. So that's the industry that I worked in. Within DuPont was the electrical and industrial industry, specifically regarding their semiconductor business. Fun fact is that 85% of the chips in all electronics actually come from DuPont. So moving on to the application process. So I had attended a national convention through NSBE, which I'm an active member in. NSBE is the National Society of Black Engineers, and I attend their national career fair essentially. Spoke to a recruiter at the booth and had my elevator pitch ready. I think that's one of the most important things, is having an elevator pitch, right? Who are you? A little bit about your self-interest, and what also contains your experience and what you plan on doing moving forward, like your interest-wise, career-wise. And after speaking with a recruiter, about my interest, we decided on some positions that would definitely be useful for me to apply to, and applied through their portal. Just uploaded my resume, and then they contacted me regarding a behavioral interview afterwards. So within this interview, there were 2 different recruiters from different sites that wanted to ask me a bunch of questions just to see which site would benefit the most to have me. And I guess the network that helped me the most was my recruiter. Definitely within the recruitment process, ask any and all questions that you have. They really like it whenever, you give an interview and they ask, do you have any questions? And definitely knowing the company's value and interest, but also asking some questions on, next steps. Regarding my experience, so as I said, CMPT, this was a manufacturing role. As a process engineering, I had 2 main projects and 1 mini that I worked with my mentor, who was also the associate lead engineer on the site. And so my main projects consisted of the standardizing and improvement of their polymer salts testing by reducing within variation, in which I was able to undergo training to get my Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt certificate, which is known in the manufacturing, especially industry. The Yellow Belt certification is a really, it's a huge certification to get. So if there's any way that you can get a certification within your internship, definitely try to, especially Yellow Belt. And then my second main project was essentially configuring and implementing an OEE, which is essentially this machine that records all the data that's going through a production line, and then allows whoever is monitoring the data to be able to maximize efficiency and effectiveness of that line. As I said, my other mini project that I worked on was with my mentor. It was a project that leadership had asked us to look into. Typically, when you're working at a manufacturing site and there's a lot going on, sometimes there's a discrepancy between leadership and some of the entry-level engineers of what can and can't happen. And we typically the engineers have to do those trials, present to leadership, just, typical presentation of what happened, why can or can't happen, and to see if there's a way to maximize efficiency on the plant. And from these projects, I was able to come out with initiating a management of control or change. And essentially, when you are working in a manufacturing site and you're trying to change something that's so minuscule but is very sensitive to the product, there's a lot of steps. It's not as easy as just going in there and changing something and then it gets done. So having an MOC get done at DuPont was a big deal, and also contributing to their effectiveness so that they may be able to maximize production and produce more of their semiconductor pads. So moving on to the takeaways that I took from the internship, honestly, what everybody had said here regarding all the panelists said all the right things. Every single one of them I was going to say myself. I guess, especially don't be afraid to ask if there's something you want to do, if there's something that you're interested in. Keep in mind that, every company does their internships differently regarding the process and also like how they handle their interns. But no matter what, definitely think about what you need, what you want, what kind of experience do you want to take from it? Do you want to learn more about the process of, the site or the product that you're helping with, or do you want to learn more about the company itself? In the past, I never thought location mattered, but this internship definitely taught me that location does matter. Are you a city kid or are you good with being in the country, So that's definitely something to think about. Do you like the cold? Do you like the hot? Are you okay with working at a site when it is 20 degrees and it's even lower at the site regarding temperature? So those are things that you should definitely think about when you are applying to an internship and also leaving from one regarding full-time offers. And if you can get a certification or any kind of takeaway, definitely want to learn as much skills as you can. That will help you be more, I guess, presentable whenever you're looking into another internship or opportunity. But certifications definitely help. Don't be afraid to be social. I think that was another thing I learned this past summer was I was very much so work, especially when you want to do a lot and you want to do great things. But don't be afraid to go out there and make some friends or at least network. That's one of the biggest things. Add people on LinkedIn. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn and follow me on my professional Instagram, Corsa. So manufacturing is also very hands-on. I thought that I was the type to run around and do things. If you're okay with doing that from your 9 to 5 every day, going into a site and then running back 2 buildings down to grab something, definitely learn are you the type to want to sit at a computer, which you can still move around if you are corporate, or are you the type to really get hands-on? You want to see all these things happen, moving all the time. Those are things definitely to think about too, especially if you're looking into a manufacturing role. So, well, thank you for allowing me to present, and that's all.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. All right, so we had our 6 panelists give wonderful presentations, so interesting. They really gave, I think, some valuable advice. So now it's up to you all who are here. Do you guys have questions for anyone? You can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Now is your time. Anyone?
We have one in the chat. So Katie asked, what minors, interests, or courses taken were most beneficial to you in getting interviews and internships? For example, did recruiters seem particularly interested in programming, supply chain, etc.?
Who wants to jump in and answer or give your thoughts on that? Go ahead, Sophie.
So I'm not sure if this is exactly what you were thinking, but I found in my experience that taking any coding or computing classes is always useful, even if it you don't think it has all that much to do with your major. And then one of the other classes I took was a professional and technical writing class, which is another thing that you can use in any internship, and it's something that I think employers really like to see.
Great. Any other panelists want to add?
I can add a little bit, just kind of going off of Sophie, like, yeah, programming is always a great thing. I know when I talked to my recruiter for Naval Nuclear, they were impressed when I told them like what we do in 112 and 122 and stuff. And also just kind of maybe an unexpected thing, but any interview I've ever had that I've gotten a job offer, like even my internship for next summer, they always like to ask about like the weird things on my resume that didn't 100% go with the job. And they really like to hear about like something that I was interested in that wasn't like, so I remember they asked me about like my research that wasn't at all like the like in the field of the job, but they were curious about that. So maybe something else that can make your resume stand out like that.
So it's okay to include things that aren't just relevant to the position, just to show well-roundedness or some other interests. Cool. Kaylee?
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends on like where you're applying to, what you're interested in. But again, like leadership positions are also really, they really like that or like stuff where you have to work in teams. And if you have like a project section on your resume as well, that's also really helpful, especially if you don't have any prior internship experience, because it really shows, like what you have done, and it kind of displays your interests better.
Great. Sarah?
Oh, forgot I was muted. But yes, I completely agree with what everybody had said. I think the biggest point to look at, especially if you don't have as much on your resume, is also answering the second question, is what have you done that you can apply into the work field? So like a lot of times whenever they do interview you, behavioral is more so like how do you behave in certain situations, right? So a lot of times, I even heard this back when I was like a freshman and sophomore. And as Kaylee said, it depends on your background, what you're trying to get into, but did you help with this club or with this a job in this way in which like you was able to break something down and build it back up? Obviously, if you did that within that work experience or whatever, that shows skills of how to break something down and build it back up. So definitely look into how you can make your resume cater to the kind of work and kind of person you want to present yourself as. And when doing that, think about what kind of person would they want to hire, right? Like you can have all these work experience, but if you can't really, explain how you can apply that to that company, it beats having like 5 and not being able to learn how to apply yourself, or just like having 1 or 2 and being able to apply yourself well. They're definitely going to hire the latter. So